Ladies and gentlemen, it is Tuesday night and it's Knucklehead Comics in the building, and we have the legendary writers and creators of the X-Men animated series, Eric and Julia Lewald. There you go. That's why we have Cap here. He learns information, man. Appreciate you guys coming on the show. Thank you for being here. Very excited. Very excited. How are you guys doing today?
Having a grand time. Just the intro alone was very funny.
Okay, well, back to the show that we're saying wonderful things about.
There you go.
Yeah.
But, to that point, it's one of the things that I love most about the X-Men animated series is when you guys were able to breach those topics. So two things: Storm, her having claustrophobia,
yes,
and seeing a hero that has something that could be debilitating, but by the end of the episode with the Shadow King, she gets over it and shows you how to build resilience. And then another character like Nightcrawler. I'm not a religious person, but seeing the way he views his relationship with religion, I can understand that, and I feel for him. And it makes it a little more accepting for somebody who's like me, who doesn't believe, who in terms where you're like, all right, I can see why there's an appeal to this, as opposed to being against it.
It wasn't a proselytizing conversion episode. It was a discussion about the concepts of faith, which I think is still fascinating that X-Men got to have that conversation on a Saturday morning kids show.
That was hard.
Holy moly.
Just again, shout out to our censor lady.
Oh yes,
in television, especially kids television. The censor person, and it's often a lady, has complete veto.
Yeah.
If she said Morph can't get shot, Morph can't get shot. If she said no talking about God, there's no talking about God. End of discussion.
Yeah.
So on these difficult story questions like that, luckily, she really liked the books. We lucked into somebody, a woman, the X-Men books. She wanted us to respect how adult they were. So we come up to something like Nightcrawler, and she said, okay, I'll listen. You can't do this gratuitously. There's a bunch of stuff I don't want you to show or talk about. But if you want to do a show about faith, let's do it, and let's do it thoughtfully.
And then Sydney Iwaner, who was Margaret Lesch's right-hand person, who gave notes on every script on every series, he kept pushing.
Yeah,
and which I kept like this can't be happening. We can't be pushing in this direction.
She couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe it when I showed her. Look, we're doing a Nightcrawler script, and since he's devout Christian, I thought, well, it's got to be about faith, right? It's are you kidding? On Saturday television, I get that past anybody. And we kept at it for a couple of weeks. And the same thing with Morph. She was nervous about that because heroes in kids shows don't get killed, in the first story. But then she saw that we weren't doing it gratuitously, and it was all about the grief of the remaining family.
The hero's journey, that this means something. There's a stake in this.
There's consequences to being an X-Men. So she bought all that. It was wonderful. It was like, 2 weeks of really careful discussion about how to handle this. And then, of course, we come back for the second season, and we had planned him to be dead. He was just supposed to stay dead. That was everyone's intention. And then somebody foolishly asked the fans.
They had a focus group of 7-year-olds.
Can we bring them back?
Said, who's your favorite X-Men in the first season? And Morph won in a landslide.
It's like,
so we get a phone call while we're writing the second season.
You got to bring him back.
That guy that you killed, that you spent all that time working to be able to kill, heroic sacrifice. Is there any way you can bring him back, please? I cried and beat my head against the wall, but we said, okay, look, we're professionals. We'll do something intense with him and bring him back, a little PTSD.
And I think those stories turned out remarkable.
Yeah,
the journey of Morph and Wolverine, I think, is a heartbreaking. And
that's what resonated so much with me when it came to Morph. It wasn't necessarily Morph. It was what happened to Wolverine. This is a man that nothing bothers him, and he took Morph's death so hard. I mean, we scream it out here at least every 3 episodes. This one's for you, Morph. We say it all the time. I looked at Wolverine and I said, this guy's untouchable. Nothing phases him besides the whole love triangle with him, Gene. We'll go into that later. But the fact that I saw him so distraught was what kind of got me like, you know, I think I was already into Batman, and you know, following the comics, death is kind of normal. Yeah, I get it was on a kid's show, but it was normal, and it wasn't really Morph's death. It was Wolverine, and seeing how bad that got him. It was so hard. Like, wow.
I think that's what happened to the 7-year-olds. They saw everybody react to Morph, because you also wrote him that he had his quick moment with everybody, and they were all laughing, and everyone had a special connection to Morph.
And we want to make him as lovable a friend and a family member as we could, so that when he's killed, it affects them all the most.
Yeah.
But it is,
Oh, please.
Oh, no, just saying how, and again, Avery Coburn understood and said, okay, you can't show it on screen. But if you go back and watch those sequences, it's even more chilling, because we don't see it. We just see their reaction when Jean Grey says, I don't sense him. It's like, this means something. This means
it's right here.
Yeah.
Every time.
You know,
I watch it the other day, and it was like, hit you right here every time. That's a funny thing is my favorite scenes are usually very little scenes, and when they're done with the missions and they're literally come out the plane and Wolverine's got some turns to Wolverine, just punches him in the gut. Goes, you know nothing about paying little man. I go, my man, you're 5'3". How is he the little man? You're 5'3". You don't even look to his eyes. Scott is like 6 feet. And
Avery Coburn understood Wolverine's loss and his grief, and that is the only time in the entire series.
In 76 episodes, any one of our team punches another one.
That's the only time.
She let us do it because she understood it was about his grief.
And that he wasn't using his claws.
That's the thing. That's the kicker. No claws. That's why Scott was so
next time I use oh my God.
That dynamic of the jokester. And by the way, that one scene where he's sitting down watching TV and he keeps morphing into people. That's what I would do with that power. That's what I would do. I would literally do that. I would sit there, sit the channel, you know, when he puts it ironically to Senator Kelly, you know, that's a fun little throw in there tying. And I'm like, I would do that. But right away, you're like, I like this guy already. 2 seconds in, I would do the exact same thing.
Funny to the point where you said, Gene, I don't sense him. Ever since that, to me, it is more impactful when they don't show anything and you realize that a character is like, oh, wait, something's wrong. That has always gotten me since then. Just those two simple words. It's amazing how effective the emotionality came through, even for little kids. And it's funny because as hearing the backstage, you know, they allowed us to do this, and they, you know, having to struggle to get certain things out. Coming from the other side of the TV, watching it, I always felt like, oh, they trust us to watch this, and to, if we don't understand, to learn and to grow, and they're not just spoon feeding us. That's why I always find that this show was vastly different and ahead of any other show.
Thank you for that. It means so much to hear that, because that's what we were hoping for that. But you know, again, the fact that it did happen, and you were there on the other, you were there and you got it.
There were like six or seven of us that were in the middle of the creative decisions, and every one of us had been in this business for, you say, 10 years, had been frustrated by how dumbed down a lot of the stuff was. We were all forced to work on, and we just kept looking at each other and said, "That's not what I remember. I remember when I was 7, I wanted to be challenged. I wanted, if the 12-year-old guy next to me was loving a movie or something, I even if I half didn't understand it, I wanted to watch that and be challenged by it and try to figure it out, rather than to watch something that's for little kids."
No.
Every person on the team remembered wanting to be challenged as a kid. So we never, I don't remember cutting something back because, kids aren't going to get this.
No, I can't. I don't think so.
We try to keep stuff clear, and they were worried. The people were worried. He said, well, continuing stories, kids going to be off running around. They're not going to remember. And then so that's when our editor said, well, I could do this previously on the X-Men thing.
Yes.
45 seconds at the beginning and catch everybody up to where they need to be caught up to, so that if there's some continuing elements in the story,
I'll
they'll
just put this here.
yeah. So that was important. But as far as writing the stories, we were writing for ourselves. I'd remembered hearing the cartoons that Warner Brothers made like in the 40s.
Oh my God.